Mr. Lamborn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last month, I offered an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, which stated that the United States should only agree to a comprehensive agreement with Iran if three conditions are met. One, Iran must cease enriching uranium. Two, Iran must cease pursuing or developing nuclear, biological, or chemical weapons and ballistic missile technology. And three, Iran must stop supporting terrorism. These are positions taken by the House in the past. This language was adopted by this committee, and the bill passed unanimously out of this committee and passed the House by a strong bipartisan vote. So let the record reflect that this now is the position of the U.S. House of Representatives. For Mr. Toby or Mr. Singh, can you describe the difference between the Israel and the U.S. definitions of what the red line is that should not be crossed, must not be crossed by Iran?
Well, I'm actually a little unclear as to what, if any, red lines the United States has drawn with respect to Iran. I think it was pretty clear from Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech at the United Nations, where he had the graphic, that production of 20% enriched uranium beyond a certain level was unacceptable to Israel. So I guess that would describe the difference as I understand it.
And Mr. Singh, how would you answer that?
I think that Mr. Toby is right. I think that the Israelis, but also not just the Israelis. I mean, the Israelis are very vocal on these points, but I think their basic view is shared by quite a few of our allies in the region, that some of the concessions that we have already made in the negotiations go too far for their comfort level. And so there's a lot of nervousness about what we're prepared to concede in this agreement, what we've already conceded in the negotiations, and what sort of stance we'll have after an agreement is reached, if in fact an agreement is reached. And so I would say that there are significant gaps between the U.S. and our allies, both Israel and the Arab allies, and it's very important that as part of our Iran policy, broadly, we address these differences, that we address these concerns that our allies have, lest we find ourselves again in a strategically much worse position after an agreement is signed.
Well, when I look at, my personal opinion is when we look at those differences, I'm inclined to agree with them more than the administration's position on which is the better approach. Changing subjects here, Secretary Kerry indicated that we are open to cooperate with Iran on the ISIS crisis in Iraq. Do you think that if such cooperation with Iran were to take place, that would give them license to be more aggressive in the region, thus impacting the nuclear negotiations? Mr. Toby?
Well, I think actually what some Iranian officials already have said is that the crisis in Iraq should give them greater leverage on the nuclear matter. In other words, if the United States expects Iranian help in Iraq, the United States should show greater flexibility in the nuclear talks. I think, of course, that were we to pursue such flexibility, it would be a disaster.
Okay. Another question, changing subjects. There's been some discussion in the Senate, and it's been squelched, but I know Senators Menendez and from Illinois, Kirk, want to have pass a bill, have sanctions in place in case the negotiations break through, do not go forward, as an incentive to the Iranians to keep negotiating. Would either of you two agree with that being a good bill to pass at this time?
I think the notion of contingent sanctions being real to the Iranian government is a constructive one for a good outcome.
I would just add to that, look, I think in any negotiation like this, there has to be an or else that's out there for the Iranians. And I think that or else can take multiple forms, a credible military threat, which I think right now isn't very credible, or contingent sanctions.
Yeah, and I agree with both of you. I'm glad to hear you say that. And Mr. Pickering, my last question, if Iran were to somehow develop a nuclear weapon, what would be, can you list some of the other countries in the region that would want to have their own nuclear program and or weapon, just so the public can be aware?
Well, I can. I think that we have always been concerned that countries like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt less so because of the turmoil in Egypt at the present time, although Egypt still a formidable potential power for moving in this direction. And in the past, we saw indications over the last 3 or 4 decades of Egyptian interest in this
Any
direction.
others? Any others?
I think the United Arab Emirates, although we have a very tight 123 agreement with them that rules out enrichment and reprocessing, and so that's important. Could I just mention on contingency sanctions? My sense is we have contingency sanctions in place at the present time, that the Iranians believe, in fact, that sanctions will happen immediately when the President wants it. Thank you.
Thank you.